Okay, so it's 11 a.m. here where I am. This is the time to start the meeting. We're waiting for Nick. I'm assuming because Luis and Tal are here, but I'm assuming Nick is doing the presentation.
Right. Yeah, Nick will make the presentation. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Hi, Nick. Do you hear me?
Yep, I see Nick too. I don't know. Can you hear us, Nick?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
All right. Let me get.
Okay, so we don't have a lot of people, but at the same time, we should probably start at the time that we said we were going to start. So this is the, or not the A and a spring working group meeting interim. The focus of this meeting, so there's not a lot of things that us as chairs want to say, except that the focus of this meeting is the SRV6 security considerations draft. The idea is that we want to accelerate as much as possible the relevance of this draft because this is a deliverable that we had committed to the ESG for. And so we can dedicate the whole hour to this work. I see that little by little we keep getting a little bit more people coming in. So the intent, as I said, is to at this meeting, at the meeting in July in Madrid, and then probably another interim between that and the meeting in November, so that we can have this draft done by the end of the year. So everyone here, please comment, please review, please be on the lookout for any changes, any additional recommendations, any changes, whatever they want to do or say about the considerations draft. So unless Joel or Bruno, you want to say anything else, I think we can hand it off to Nick and the team.
All right.
So go.
Okay. So it's been a week already. So you can't see any of my speaker notes, unfortunately, but I did send out the, basically the high level of those. We got a lot of guidance on, kind of where we were and where we wanted to go. And, I wanted to thank you, Alvaro, for helping out with that. I think that gave us a little bit of better direction. We were frankly a little bit rudderless for a bit. But I think we've got a pretty solid document. We went and, Tal did a lot of work. Everybody put in their input. But, Tal did a lot of the legwork, pushed a lot of PRs and stuff as well. So I think you'll be happy. If not, we'll adjust accordingly. So basically, there was some guidance that was given that, gave us a plan of attack to get us to the end of the year so that we could hopefully at least come to conclusion, whatever that conclusion may be. part of that was, a nice sectioned out, do this part, do this part, do this part, which I think made a lot of sense. So to that end, we I believe met the May deliverables that we had all agreed upon. Part of what we did there was to kind of tie together how the data plane and the control plane attacks are really kind of hand in glove. We made some changes to the threat terminology to better define internal versus external attacks. We refined some figures to make them a little more readable, specifically figure 1, made that a little bit less complicated, pared it down to 5 attack types. Within section 5, we decided to change the terminology. Actually, it started in section 5 and it ended up being the entire document for consistency. We changed impact from impact to outcome. That should be uniform throughout the document. I think it makes it a little more easy to consume. We then went on in section 5 to expand on the system integrity attacks, to better tie into the management and control plane into the data plane. We added some details around several different things, including path selection or path avoidance, to sort of enumerate what those attacks could look like. We added some detail on header modifications and what that should be considered around that topic. Expanded on the denial of service attacks to include, more on resource exhaustion, forwarding loops, and sort of packet discard as an attack vector. We then went on into section 621, expanded on the on-path modification attacks. We took the table out to make it a little bit easier to read. And we enumerated on the on-path attack vectors, like SID list modifications, destination address manipulation, modifications of the TLV, sort of fleshed those out a little bit more. We then went on to section 623, cleaned up the effects section, made a reference back to section 5 for the details so that you can kind of refer back to the stuff we've already said. We don't have to repeat it, and provided a more concise list of those details. 6.7, we added an attack summary table to make a nice referenceable diagram table type of reference point, I guess. In 7.1.1, we included more filtering details and expanded on the trusted domain theory or trusted domain terminology. Added a better description for what essentially boils down to a fail open scenario. With filtering, with leaving out or having misconfigured filtering, essentially failing open. Put some details in there to describe that and sort of make that a little more clear. Added some more details on the trusted domain. I think we probably want to, I sent some email to the list, add back in the reference to the Kamari draft around some of those details as well. We took that out. We had that in and we took it out because we weren't, there was some debate on whether we should have a reference to a non-adopted draft or not. But I think, given guidance, referencing is better than not referencing. Because I basically rewrote it to be not quite what was written in there, but essentially the same, so that we could take the reference out. And I think that probably makes it a weaker document doing it that way. So we should probably add that back in. Let's see, where was I? Let's see. Section 7.1.2, we added some more details on the SRH filtering and what the usefulness of that mechanism is. And then we further went down in 7.1.3 and added address range filtering to expand on recommendations around filtering with the internal address ranges for SRv6. Made a reference to RFC 9099 I'd also like to get some input on that as I read over that. I almost want to read the address range filtering first because of the way that SRH filtering is structured. It sort of is confusing. I'd like to get some input on that. I think we should reverse 712 and 713 and make address range filtering before SRH filtering.
Nick, should we take questions during your presentation? We have one in the queue.
Sure.
Tom, go ahead.
Hello there. Hopefully you can hear me.
Yes.
I raised a point at the last working group meeting in Bangkok about the ordered list in the address range filtering. And I was asked to go and post on the list, and I've neglected to do it. But just bringing this up again, as that's the section that we're talking about at the moment. There's a specific point in there where it says, some of the examples of infrastructure address range for SIDS are 1, ULA addresses, 2, the prefix defined in 9602, 3, GUA addresses. I don't think ULA should be, at the moment that looks like an ordered list, and I don't think ULA should be at the front. I think the prefix defined in RFC 19602 should be at the front. So if we are intending to make that an ordered list instead of an unordered list, that needs some attention. I also don't feel that GUA should be in there at all.
Okay.
Particular reference to security and fail open, that to me sounds like something that's inappropriate. But also we do have to be concerned a little bit about the amount of v6 that in theory can be justified on the basis of network programming for requests to APNIC, ARIN, etc. And there has been a particularly large allocation request through APNIC.
Interesting.
For this. So yeah, I have a feeling we probably shouldn't include GUA in there.
Yeah, perhaps something to the effect of GUA may be used, but I guess should we just leave it out entirely, or should we assert that it can be used, but special consideration should be made if you're going to do that? I would be in favor of renumbering those as, because it can read as an ordered list, to not put ULA first, to use the specific allocation for SRv6 as the preferred mechanism, or at least the first one on the list, and then maybe a caveat of using GUA.
I think if the intention here of this document is to effectively recommend a secure deployment, certainly any caveat around GUA should be made, in my opinion, under the guise that it should not be used if one is designing a secure system. There is reference to the trusted domain. I could bring reference to the trusted domain part of RFC 80, is it 8402? The segment routing RFC, which effectively states that these things should not be forwarded outside of their trusted domain, and to use GUA kind of makes that very. It seems to be the spirit of what this document is about, which is how do you build these things in a way that they are relatively secure.
Yeah.
And so yes, I think any mention of GUA should be with that in mind.
Yep, I don't disagree with that. I personally have done it with GUA in a lab, and I wouldn't do it in production. So, my opinion is very closely aligned with yours, and as long as that's the consensus of everyone, I'm very happy to change that. And like Eric said, move ULA down, because I think when we originally wrote some of this, the SRv6 block wasn't allocated yet, or it at least wasn't socialized well enough that I didn't know about it. So I'm happy to make those adjustments.
There's arguments to state that ULA shouldn't be used for this at all either, but I won't go into them now. I think I shall write something and send it off to you, to the list.
Yeah, I'm happy to add that too. If the recommendation is not to use ULA, then I'm not married to that. I tell people not to use ULA all the time. They just don't always listen.
Yes, we're a long way past that as well.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Suresh?
Yeah, thank you. So I'm fine with switching the order, like Tom said, Nick. Put the SIP prefix first, and I'm against removing GUA or ULA from it. Like I think it's fine to caveat like what the things are, and I would love to see this text from Tom about the ULA. But yeah, I think the idea would be to say like, hey, like the thing I'm really worried about is that there is people who have deployed on ULA, and I think it's better to recommend like how to secure that thing. And probably take up the discussion on why they shouldn't do ULA in like SRv6 ops, to say like, hey, like this is why we shouldn't do it, but not in the security thing. I think our goal should be to state the security properties of this like may not be desirable and how. I think that's kind of what I think like Thomas like volunteered to write, and I think that could be good to add in here, right? Like instead of saying like don't do it, because people have done it. So I think that's like probably I would rather like guidance than like slapping down at this point, because like as you said, the timing was like a bit late for the SIP prefix.
Okay, if I may, I mean, if we can write caveats on ULA to explain how it's securable, then that makes good sense. If people are using it, telling them how to secure it is what this document is for.
Yeah.
On GUA, I have real trouble understanding how one secures it, but I can wait and see what text you guys can write.
Yeah, I mean, I think that using GUA is, there's the section on fail open that I think indirectly points out maybe we should just be really explicit in that, in there, that it's going to be error prone. And I agree. Securing it is more trouble than it's worth when you have if it's a green field or if you're just migrating to it. I can't see any reason not to use the allocated, the dedicated IANA 5F space. I can't remember the RFC number.
Yeah,
but
9602. Joel, I agree with you. Like, and Nick too, right? Like, so there is the Warren draft, right, in Interia, the safer domain stuff that Eric and I are also like co-authoring, right? I think like there is some stuff in there. If you can use a indirection instead of trying to redefine, or if you don't like the text there, to kind of put the like the changes in there, because it does talk about this like fail open stuff. So instead of like spreading it, like we can talk, if we can fade share on that one, I'd be really happy.
Okay, I'm taking some notes here.
Okay. So that's the safer domains draft, Nick, right? So that is the more generic version of the stuff like Warren and Andrew did with the ether type stuff. So this is like really not something specific to SRv6, but something that really handles a lot of these trusted domain and closed stuff protocols, right? So I think that part should potentially apply here, like whatever Joel said, right? About how like the fail open, what are the fail open issues, pretty much, right? It's documented there.
Okay.
And you'll take like any changes like you want in there to put in there.
Okay. Yeah, I'll take a look at that again and see what I can implement. See what fits in there, and if I've got any suggestions, I'll definitely.
Thank you. Thanks.
So I think is there any other questions?
Yeah, then we've got two more people on the queue.
Okay.
Hey, Nick, this is Alvaro. Yes. Hey. So I wanted to sort of go back a little bit. I agree with most of what people said about ULA and GUA and all that stuff. But I wanted to go back a little bit on the purpose of this document. And you wrote it at the beginning, which is we're going to, and I'm just doing this from memory, I have that in front of me. We're going to describe what the security issues are and what mechanisms exist, right? So, in other words, I don't think, or I think that the purpose is to illustrate that. In other words, as everyone has so said, if people, for whatever reason, want to use new ways, it would be good to tell them here what are the issues. I don't think the purpose of this document is to for us, for every risk to agree on the way forward, or a way forward, or to recommend a specific solution, because there may be other solutions in the future, et cetera. And if we can at least document the current state of where we are, what the issues are, what are possible, and that's how I sort of read that list about ULA 90, whatever the RC is, and GUAs, that it's a list of examples, right? But I can see how people can interpret that as an order list of things. But if we can, as I said, focus on these are the issues, these are potential mitigations that are already out there. I think that's the the path we should follow.
Okay.
I'm saying this as a working participant, right? So, and things like for example, referring to the to the Kumari draft on the domains and things like that. I think that's fine. I think the thing is we need to keep a close eye on how it develops and how it goes forward, right? Because I think Suresh just said that it is not SR specific, so we need to make sure that whatever changes happen in the future, if any changes happen, that they stay in line with whatever we want to say in this draft.
Okay, that makes sense.
I have one other thing that I think half my chair hat on I want us to think about, and it is the relationship between this draft and all the others, because all the existing RFCs. Because if we are augmenting or changing or adding more recommendations or more issues or whatever, or more mitigations to the existing technology, right? Because we're basing this on the existing RFCs, all the way up to the compression one, right? For example, then we want to, what is the relationship? Are we replacing all the security considerations, or are we adding to them? And I think the answer should be we're adding to them. In other words, we don't want to repeat everything that's already been said in all the other RFCs, but we want to complement what those say. And to me, all this comes down to the question of, should this draft update everything else? So that when I go read, I don't know, 8754 or whatever, 8402 or anything else, that I know that I need to come look at this one too.
I mean, that's certainly been the goal in our, authoring, is that, we want to reference things. We don't want to recreate things, and make this, sort of a comprehensive reference document that people can read, that has links to other things that might, enhance their knowledge of what they, how they should be doing things and what's possible. So,
Right. So what I mean is,
reads that way.
Right. So what I mean is, we should put in the header of the draft that this updates 8402.
I get what you're saying.
All those things, so that when I go read 8402, I can see, oh, look, there's that other draft, that other RFC that also talks about whatever that is related to this one, so I can go look at it. So that so that I don't have to find this one to know that it augments 8402. And I'm just saying 8402, but there's a whole list of RFCs there.
Yeah, no, I'm picking up what you're laying down there.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay. We have one more person in the queue.
Yeah, and this is me. Just reacting to Alvaro's point that this document should update RSC 8402, if not mistaken, because I'm pretty bad with RSC numbers. This is the SR architecture. I don't think it's updating it, but okay, we can talk later. I wanted to make about section 4. That was before threat model, which has been renamed in threat terminology. And I think section 4 should be split in two, because the first part is about terminology. And when you talk about the figure, and by the way, SVG could be nice to be used there. It's more threat model. So getting section 4, becoming section 4 threat terminology, and part of it a new section 5 about threat model to be more logical here.
Okay, let me see if I can get that. So you want to split section 4 into 2. One is the threat model.
Threat terminology and one the threat model.
Okay.
Just to make, this is just for logic, right? Now, in this section 4, right, in terminology, there's a sentence that I have no clue what does it mean? How is it possible? A node is located such it can send and receive packets to and from a node in the SR domain without traversing SR ingress node or SR egress node. Honestly, I don't understand how it's possible there.
Yeah, that's an interesting statement. That's an interesting sentence, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, if it's by magic, this could be cool. But I don't understand it, so it would be nice if it's been rephrased so I can understand it. And I think another quarter is in the queue, so.
Let's see. Let me take some notes on that. All right. I think I got that to where I'll understand what I mean later when I read it. I may follow up with you again on that if I look at my notes and I don't understand what I've written there.
Of course, with pleasure.
Okay.
Tal?
Yeah, so just in response to Eric's comment about which part is the threat model and which part is the threat terminology, I think it may be a good point that we might need to split it, but just technically speaking, the threat model is kind of a general term that is sometimes used in different contexts and different drafts, but generally speaking, when you go back to previous documents, in some cases, the threat model is a general description of the threats, attacks, and also mitigations. So I think it was intentional in this case to rename the section in order to avoid that confusion. We want to, throughout the document, we want to distinguish between terminology, attacks, mitigations. I think right now that's very clear. And in some cases, people will say the threat model is just the entire thing, not just the threats, including the attacks and mitigations and so on. So again, I think in order to avoid confusion, we'll use as simple and clear terminology as possible.
Okay. Let's see. We have some more people in the queue. Bruno?
Yes, so you have a section about address range filtering, which is good. I believe it's about packet filtering. Maybe you want to add a section or include in the section a text about reachability filtering, so that the segment routing block is not advertised in BGP. Even better, never originated, but something about BGP control plane.
Okay. So let me read that back to you. What I think you meant. Basically, yes. You're suggesting a bit of a blurb in there about verifying that your SR block is not any BGP policies being announced to any external peers.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, that is a good thought.
And maybe it's even better if you never originate your prefix block in BGP and keep it in IGP. Okay. It may not always be possible if you have multiple autonomous systems.
Okay. All right. So I only have a couple other things in here. So we from here, after 713, when we did some address range filtering work, again, I would like some input. either here on the list on if we should reverse the order of 7.1.2 and 7.1.3. So in 7.3, we did a little bit of expansion on the HMAC TLV and its usefulness. Not too much, just sort of clarified some things. And then in section 8, we refined the middle box filtering section to make it a little bit more readable. And that is basically the summary of the changes we made so far. Next up, so again, I think we have an answer to the first bullet there. We want to reintroduce that for July at IETF 123, which I just got approval for going to yesterday, so I should be there. We'll have some control plane threat model, attack and mitigation details, which I think, all of these are kind of woven together. So we'll just go over that again and make sure that we've got everything we think we need in there. And September management plane threat model, attacks and mitigation, which again, a lot of these are very intertwined, because if you have access to the control plane or the management plane, then you can affect the data plane. So that's the plan for IETF 124. We may be a little bit ahead of the game there, depending on what people think. I'd definitely be open to any thoughts on that comment as well. And what else?
So I put myself in the queue. I just had a quick question. I still don't understand the difference in your mind between the control plane and the management plane. But I guess we're going to say look forward to July too.
Well, I can tell you how I define it, which may not make sense in the context of this, but control plane meaning protocols that control the data plane. Management plane to me is essentially access to the platform. That's just kind of how it's been ingrained in me. I don't know if that's what other people think as well, but we should have a consensus on what that actually means.
Right. So for you, for example, the PC is in the control plane, but I guess logging into the box with SSH and changing the config, that's management plane.
Yes. However, I also define things like out-of-band management as management plane, which I don't know if is correct in some people's minds.
Okay.
And I don't know if that's in scope, right? Only because I've designed a bunch of those for my day job, and so that's just sort of all meshed together.
Yeah, I don't see why it wouldn't be in scope, right? We're trying to look at all.
Yeah, I keep having to pull my own, access to cellular out of band or, that kind of thing out of the context here, because my mind immediately goes there because I've had to do so many red teaming engagements on that kind of stuff. So I don't think it belongs in there. You tell me if I'm wrong. It seems like physical level security, and that's out of scope.
So as I said, let's try and define that a little bit more.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
And I agree with what Eric just put in the chat. If your management plane is owned, then you're in deep trouble with or without SRv6. I agree. That's why it's one of the first things I look for when I'm doing red teaming.
Hi, Nick. Dhruv here. Nick, I had one question first on the on-path and off-path discussion. Especially, I wanted to mention, does it really hold any value in case of control plane and management plane? I see that in our current draft, we still give example that, yes, there is an on-path management plane attack of sorts. I'm thinking, especially if I think PCE as a protocol and I'm using end-to-end TCP connection and that too, if it is like, our PSEP documents anyway say use TLS with PSEP, what is the point of like the on path control plane or management plane attack vector? I'm currently not sure, but on the other hand, if you are also considering IGP and OSPF and ISIS as a control plane, in that case, are you thinking something? So what I mean to say is, like, when we say control plane, we need to go a little bit more deeper and differentiate between the various different control planes there is. And I think I know that that's the next steps that you will do in the coming month. But as I read the current document, I'm not sure what you exactly mean when we use a generic term like control plane on path.
Nick, can I answer that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So some of the work we started doing was going back to previous documents that describe control plane security aspects. And obviously, we're not reinventing the wheel here. But when we worked on the threat terminology, we wanted to make sure the terminology would fit the data plane aspects we're analyzing, and also the control plane and management plane aspects. And in some of these previous documents, in previous RFCs we looked at, we did see on-path and off-path terminology in the context of control plane documents. And that's why we added this aspect specifically to the threat terminology section. And once we add more information about the control plane, which is the next step we're going to take, we're also going to address exactly that question of whether there's a difference between on-path and off-path attackers in the control plane. So I think that will probably answer your question a little bit. And this is a very important point. In my view, we're not reinventing the wheel. I don't think we want to go into the definition of what is the control plane, what is the management plane. I think in most cases, the security aspects are going to be almost identical to other management plane and control plane protocols that we're already familiar with, and we want to focus only on the aspects which are specifically different in SRv6. So that's the work that we plan to do in the next few months.
I understand, and I think the main concern here would be, like, you are right that what is SRv6 specific thing that you can control via control plane management, which you will not do in SRMPLS, for instance. I think that should be the key, rather than the whole segment routing architecture. What are the possible control plane and management plane attack? I think, yeah, that's a good strategy. I would suggest that you focus on that. And if you have that example handy on what is a control plane on path from any existing RFC, you can just send it to me offline or on the list so that I understand where you are coming from.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks,
I have one more question. In the last update, I saw that we added the terminology PCCC, and we said that somehow that on path makes more sense for PC as a central controller, and I was not sure why that was done. So maybe that's one more point, which is like, maybe wearing PC working group chair hat. I was not sure why that change was done, and maybe it's related to the same discussion that we were having.
Actually, it was based on a comment that you raised in the previous IETF meeting, and I thought that this would address your comment. But if you have a suggestion of how to change that to, to be more accurate, I would be happy to make that
let's
change.
let's work offline on that. But thank you for the update. Thanks.
Yeah, I'd like to be looped in on that as well, just simply for the reason that in our deployment, we're considering that part of the control plane. Okay. Do you have any other questions? Comments? Are we going we heading in the right direction? I guess that's a question I can ask.
Ketan's on the queue, presumably to ask the question he put in the chat. Go ahead, Ketan.
Okay. Yeah, hi. Yes, it was about what I put in the chat. So I saw this new text blob in section 111 about the trusted domain. And I've just read it out. It says, practically speaking, this means that successfully enforcing a trusted domain may be operationally difficult and error prone in practice. and that attacks that are expected to be, I mean, it goes on so and so. So I'm not sure what that means. Is it, could the authors clarify that?
So I can give you what my interpretation of that is, and then Tal can, he can chime in as well if he wants to. But essentially, that is in reference to being able to have a uniform filtering policy for, for example, let's say you're running GUA on your, as your SRv6 block. The filtering of that, inside that trusted domain where that exists, it has to be completely uniform, because a failure in any one location represents a fail open and an essential failure of the entire thing. So it's really meant to call out the amount of effort that's required to be able to create that environment and maintain it long term.
Okay. And is this specific to use of GUA, or would it be also for the 9602 space?
I think that, I mean, it's relevant no matter what, but I think that with the 9602 space, as long as you're not, originating it in BGP and trying to hand it to other people, like for example, if you want to do intradomain SRv6, which we've defined as out of scope for this, it never gets routed outside of your environment. So I think it's probably a little bit less prone to that. But still, this really goes to any type of large scale enforcement. You just have to do your due diligence. It's not necessarily an easy task no matter what. Tal, do you want to add anything there?
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. Basically, just the way I see it, the statement there is just when you use a trusted domain, you need to be aware that at the end of the day, it depends on a filtering mechanism. If the filtering mechanism doesn't work, the domain isn't trusted anymore. I think that's the message there. And if you think that paragraph conveys that message, that's great. If not, if you have any suggestions of how to change that text, we'll be happy to review that suggestion.
I mean, a follow-on question. This is something that's done already by operators to protect their infrastructure address space, whether it's IPv6 or even IPv4 for that matter. This is something that operators already do today. I wanted to understand how adding the SRv6 block as an addition to that best practice would be something operationally difficult or error prone.
I don't think it's specifically it is, because you can use the SRv6 block to do, all of the things that we've enumerated in the attack vectors. So that's why it's in there. But I would assert that it's not difficult only for that. We're just pointing out the context in which it is applicable to SRv6. It's a tough thing to do in IPv4 as well, IPv4 and IPv6. It's, those are the attack vectors that are easy to look for. And I think I don't know if anybody would be shocked, but it's very common that things are not parity across entire domains, where that's getting less and less so with automation, but especially ACLs across very large domains tend to skew as things change over time and are not always uniform. But that's a larger, that's a 30,000 foot view. We're only putting this in here to sort of illustrate the context in which it's important to understand the amount of effort involved in an SRv6 context.
Okay, I think probably this needs further discussion. I look forward to track how this goes. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if you've got suggestions on how we can make that better understood or more easily relay the message we're trying to get across, please, by all means, we're happy to entertain all suggestions and comments. Let's see. Any more questions, comments, concerns? Overall, is this going in the direction that folks are happy with?
Do you want us to hum, Nick?
I'm sorry?
I said, did you want us to hum? I'm just kidding.
Sure. I don't know. What does that mean? Is that something people do?
Can we run a poll?
Sure.
Oh God. So the question is, are you happy? Here we go. There's a poll. Okay, so far we got 9. We're only 15 in the room, so yeah, the other 6 we know they're probably back asleep. 11. So yeah, I think we're generally happy with
Good.
where are we going? I'm gonna terminate this. So unless you have anything, do you have anything else that you want to go through?
That's everything we've got for today. Unless Tal has anything he wants to add or any questions he wants to pose to the group.
I think we're good to go.
Thank you, Nick and Tal, and thank you to all the participants for actually engaging in discussion. And we'll try to move this important document forward.
And we'll have an update. We'll have an update from Madrid, and I should be there to give it.
Sounds great. And I just want to ask everyone here again, thank you for being here, but please remain engaged and review all the revisions that are going to come up in the next couple of months, so that we can get that out by the end of the year. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Chairs. Thanks, Nick. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we'll see everyone in Madrid.